Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Katie Conklin. I'm the program director at Tuesday's Child. I have been with Tuesday's Child about 8 years. My background is that I have an early childhood degree and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I started Tuesday's Child as an intern. I was getting my master's in counseling, and I really wanted to work with families and young children. And so I came to Tuesday's Child, and I was really empowered by their mission. It was a place where families come, and they come to us in crisis because the kind of kids that they work with they've been kicked out of multiple preschools or daycares, and their families are just really kind of tormented with what to do with their challenging behavior. And they come to our program once a week for 2.5 hours for between 8 to 12 weeks, and their children are to receive service in our program, in our therapeutic classrooms, and their parents go into the parent room and are serviced with a clinical psychologist and a director of parent education. And really, in 8 to 12 weeks, they see a big difference in their child's behavior. And it's just really empowering to see that. So, hi Deb, thank you for coming. Welcome. Like I said, I would love to see kind of like, you know, as you're signing in, if you could just kind of tell me who you work with and the age of your kids that you work with, what your role is, that would be great. So anyway, so Tuesday's Child, what do we do? The kids that we service in our classrooms are 18 months to 6 years old, and typically they are displaying some sort of behavioral challenges that can look like many things. It can range from being strong-willed, won't take no to an answer at home. It can also look like that in the classroom. So, you know, they're the kid that's like, you want me to sit for circle time? I'm not really interested in circle time. I'm interested in doing what I want to do. They often are having difficulties with social interactions with their peers and other adults, taking teacher direction, staying with the task at hand, and engaging appropriately in socially appropriate peers interactions. And so what we work on at Tuesday's Child in our very small structured environment is social interactions, the exchanges between peers and adults, compliance within the classroom, transitions, and their time on task. But it's very play-based. We're working from a play-based model. Kids come in, they're playing, and they're hearing techniques and strategies that we'll go over today that they take with them into other environments. The same techniques and strategies their parents use are learning in the classroom to work on at home, behaviors at home. So taking, again, compliance in general, taking no for an answer, following directions on the first command, bedtime, mealtime, bath time type behaviors. As I said, kids come to Tuesday's Child once a week for 2.5 hours for about 12 weeks. Our parent room works on a peer-to-peer model. Parents are trained by another parent who has been through the program, and then the last hour is in a group with a clinical child psychologist. Our classroom makeup for our older kids, our 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds, we have 1 teacher to 5 children, and then for our younger kids, 18 months to 3 years old, we have 1 teacher to 3 kids. And I realize that we have amazing ratios. Part of that is because all of the kids in our classroom are strong-willed, non-compliant, challenging kiddos, and so they need a lot of support while they're here to help them kind of navigate that classroom environment. Our philosophy is really that we want to really bombard them with adult interaction and give them positive influences in the classroom so that they can take it into other environments and be more successful. So we're always coming from a kind of philosophy of how can we help set our kids up for success. Hi Haley, thank you. Nice to see you. For any of you who have looked through the PowerPoint, I will tend to talk about topics in the group, but it doesn't necessarily follow the exact slide-to-slide presentation. So I might jump around a little bit. Sorry, it's just kind of the way that sometimes things just need to be intertwined. So the first couple of slides just talk about who we are at Tuesday's Child, our mission, our vision, and then what we do. And as you can see, we do lots of things, but our basic program is behavioral intervention. And really trying to, you know, set kids up for success and really kind of come from a different avenue and give them some new habits, because right now they're full of bad habits. In terms of questions, I will do my best to kind of look at the screen. I welcome questions. I would love for you to, interact and, jump in if there's something that I say and you want more explanation on. There is a little bit of a delay, so I'm not trying to ignore you. It just might be that I didn't get it right away. But feel free to jump in. If I don't answer it in the moment, there'll definitely be a Q&A at the end. Okay, is everyone ready? Yeah? Okay, so our first technique, so two-stage child, what do we work on first and foremost? Parents come into our parent room, kids enter our classroom, and again, like I said, they're here because they've been asked to leave one or more daycare environments. They're really struggling in school, they're struggling at the park district, they're struggling at home. And we say to parents, what we want you to do for the first 2 weeks of your homework is we want you to catch them being good. We want you to praise, praise, praise. And teachers and parents look at me and they're like, I praise all the time. This is something that we already do. And what we say is, yes, we know. We, as educators, we understand the importance of praise. We understand that, when a child shows us their artwork that they worked hard on, we're going to say, wow, you worked hard on that. That's great. We love your blue colors. But what we want you to do is really to be purposeful in your praise. We ask parents to take the 2 hardest hours of the day, which is often getting up and ready and getting out of the house in the morning, being able to go to bed at night. Bedtime's always a big one, the witching hour between getting home from work, dinner time to bedtime. And we say, we want you to catch that child being good. We want you to specific behaviorally praise that child 10 times in an hour. And parents look at us like, what? You have to be kidding me. I'm here because my kid doesn't do anything right. I'm here because my kid was just asked to leave the 3rd preschool. And we say we're not looking for A+ behavior. We're looking for very, in between. If you're looking at a classroom environment, if you're getting and you line up in the hallway, and the first time you ask that child to get in line, and he actually goes and he stands in line for 1 second, we want you to catch that. Then he gets off task and he walks out of line. You have to deal with that too. But you also, what we want that child to hear is, you know how to stand in line. Good for you. You followed the direction. And so if you hear I often try and say, let's not start with these global statements of, oh, you did a good job, or I like that, because what we do is we get lazy in our praise, and we no longer pair it to the behavior. And what we're doing at Tuesday's Child is using praise as a behavior management tool. We're using praise as a way to encourage our kids to make good choices. Because the kids that we see at Tuesday's Child, and probably the kids that you're working with in your agencies, in your centers, and your organizations, they're really used to hearing juicy, negative attention, because we have to stop the madness all the time. The kids that we see are just high energy. They have scathingly brilliant ideas, like shaving the cat, you have to stop that, and we're really good at that. We get down on their level, we make eye contact, we might even touch them and say, why are you doing that? You can't do that, that's not the right choice, it's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And we're really into it, and we're really engaged, and we're really juicy. And then when they're making the right choices, we're like, oh, I can take a breath. Because they're high energy, and so they take a lot of energy out of us. We want you to take that energy and put it in a more purposeful interaction. We want you to take that energy, and it's still energy seeking, but we want you to notice their good behaviors. Our kids do make good choices. All throughout the day they make good choices. And if we're really purposeful in telling them that we appreciate those good choices, it starts to rebuild their confidence. And they're like, okay, they want our attention, no matter what. One way or other, our kids are going to get our attention. It's just a matter of the purpose that we would like to put to that attention. So again, we ask parents to praise at the most difficult times of the day. 20 times in a 2-hour period is the rate that we're looking at. And I would say the same thing to classroom teachers. Praise, praise, praise. Catch them being good. That's kind of your motto all the time. Tuesday's Child has these really kind of cheesy catchphrases, and that's one of them, is catch them being good. And remembering that we're really using our attention to their behavior as a behavior modification technique. It's not looking at their self-esteem. Yes, we think self-esteem is important. We're not saying that it's not necessary, but we really want our attention to be what's the driving force behind what's going to change their behavior. So, for example, it might be, Oh, you put your coat in the cubby. That's great knowing the expectations. You really know how to follow the classroom rules. And if you hear my words, I'm trying to be a little more juicy. Expectations. What a big word for a preschooler. They're like, ooh, okay, expectations, great. The kind of kids that we see at Tuesday's Child tend to be pretty bright, happening kids. They might have some sensory issues, they might have a speech delay, but in general, they kind of get it. They kind of get what the, the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's the social piece that they're very just socially immature. And so they want to juice it up all the time. They're just looking for juice. And so I would like to say, like, think of juicy words that encourage them to really kind of pay attention and hook into what you're saying. Because again, what we want them to know is that we're the important information. We are the people who are going to give them what they need. And so how are we going to get them to notice us? I give some examples of praise. There's a million ways to say great job. Again, always thinking of how we can say great job with the behavior. So you're always trying to think of what is the behavior that you want to see? What is the behavior that we want to increase? Oftentimes that's following directions, listening, following directions on the first request. And you can even say that on the few times that the child that you're working with says to you, they follow the direction. I would say, I really appreciate that you followed the direction the first time I asked you, because that sets the stage for what is the expectation. The expectation is that you followed the direction the first time. And I think sometimes we fall into this assumption that kids know what it is that we're looking for, what kind of A+ behavior we want to see, even B- behavior, what we want to see. And sometimes they don't have that information. Again, we're always on top of these power, high energy kids because they need us to be. We want to be on top of them when they're making the right choices. And we want them to internalize that. We want them, by the time they're in 3rd grade, to be able to say, okay, I'm making the right choice. The teacher told me to go to my desk and pull out my math book and turn to page 52 and do all the odd numbers. I went to my desk, check. I turned the page, check. And we want them to be able to internalize that. And right now, they need that information from us. And they need us to kind of be their follow-through, because they're just impulsive and they can't do that themselves. So as we continue to talk about praise, that's always everything that we do is praise. It's the baseline for all of our philosophies and all of our techniques. Again, as I said, it's 2 weeks. It's high intervals of praise because we're using our attention. One of the things that we like to talk a lot about, and I think that it's so powerful in a classroom, is taking the no out. Another cheesy catchphrase. And when we talk about this, when you listen to yourselves talking to kids, I think so often we tell our high energy kids, don't touch that. No, you can't go outside today. Stop running in the hallway. No, you can't have a snack before it's nap time. Stop touching your friend. Don't do this. And we're constantly giving them these no, don't, and stop words and commands about all the things that they can't do. Never in there have we really said to them, what can you do? What can you do? And for a lot of our kids, their bad behavior is stopped so often that no, don't, and stop are trigger words for them. It's a trigger word to be like, well, now I need to, before she gets it out, before she tells me not to run, I'm going to run faster. I'm going to jump further. I'm going to climb higher, because I know that she's going to come in and stop all the fun and be the mood killer in the classroom. And that is our job, and it is our job to keep kids safe, and we need to keep them safe. But sometimes if we just rephrase what we're trying to say and don't start your sentences with no, don't, or stop, you stop the tantrum. Because what it does is it tells our kids, if I'm going to, either it makes me do it more, or it gets me into the power struggle, or automatically I have a tantrum. So they're the kid that you say, don't touch your friend, and they just fall to the floor and have a meltdown. And you're like, well, that's not what I wanted. My intention wasn't to make you cry. My intention was to teach you how to be more social with your friend. And so what we want to do is we want to change it up. We want to say, oh, a kid comes to us and they say, are we going outside today? And it's, -25 degrees outside, and you're like, No, we're not going outside today. It's freezing cold. Instead, we want you to say, he comes up to you and says, are we going outside today? And you say, oh, you want to go outside today? Yes, I do. Oh, what do you like to do outside? Can you tell me about outside? What's your favorite thing to do outside? And so what we're trying to do is move them through that moment, because a lot of times it's just a wish. It's a wish that we're going to get, that they're going to get whatever crazy idea that they think they should, you know, be accustomed to, and they should get, and they're entitled to. And so if we just say and validate, oh, you love to go outside. Yeah, great. But we also need to set a limit, and that's okay. There's ways that we can set a limit. So when they say things that are, you know, that they need, and we need to set a limit, or they're being dangerous, and so we say, you know, they're climbing on the table, or they're climbing over furniture, and we have to say to them, your feet belong on the floor, stop climbing because it's not safe. We can say that. We can say but instead of saying stop climbing, we can say your feet belong on the floor. And the expectation is that their feet are going to be on the floor. And what that looks like also is that when we tell them that, it holds, and we've said to them the information that they need to be more successful in the classroom, they know the expectation. Now they know what's expected of them. And so if they choose not to do it, then it makes our job a little easier, because then we can follow through. We can say, remember, buddy, your feet need to be on the floor. It looks like you need me to help you put you on the floor. So it allows us to be consistent and predictable in what we're saying, because we've given them the information of what they need to do. The idea of taking the no out, I think, is really just, it's so powerful, because again, as I said, I feel like our kids are so responsive to no, don't, or stop. Our kids are just so willing to always try and meet your energy. They're always wanting to be engaged in power struggle. And as soon as they hear those words, they always have a comeback. So if we say, you know, it's not, don't climb on furniture, it's not safe, or you're going to get hurt, then they're like, I won't get hurt. No, I won't, because their data shows they haven't gotten hurt in the past. They're really good climbers. But it's like, well, no. But again, if we change it up and we say your feet need to be on the floor, it takes the negotiation out of the conversation. And again, as I stated earlier with praise, what the kind of power kids that we work with all the time, what they want to see is the power struggle. They want juicy attention. They want you to be engaged with them. So they'll do anything to continue that conversation. They'll argue with you until the cows come home. And so again, trying to, and you know, if you go to say no, or you go to say don't or stop, what you can say is, you know what I meant to say, buddy. What I meant to say, buddy, is our feet stay on the floor. You need to use your nice hands. And that way, when we have to stop very dangerous and aggressive behavior, and we need to put no, don't, or stop in place, it becomes more powerful. It becomes something that our children, they haven't heard it 100 times in the last hour. And so when we need to stop dangerous or aggressive behavior, they're more likely to say, oh, I need to cue into that. But right now, what their data shows is like, oh, yeah, just another moment, just another opportunity to be told to, you know, stop the fun. So trying to always remembering that, you know, how can we tell them the information that they need, not starting our sentences with no, don't, or stop. Okay, so Tuesday's Child, and the way that we believe how children learn. So Tuesday's Child is very behavioral. Everything that we do comes from a behavioral theory. We are very much looking at the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. The antecedent is what happens before the child's behavior, and the behavior is any behavior that you see, and the consequence is anything that happens afterwards. So consequence, while it has a negative connotation, doesn't have to be negative. It can be anything. So for example, you say to Susie, Susie, you need to go pick up your blocks. Susie goes over, she picks up her blocks, and that would be the behavior, and the teacher says, wow, Susie, you did a great job listening, you cleaned up your blocks. There's the consequence. My attention is Susie's consequence for appropriate behavior. Then the very same situation, it could be Susie goes over and picks up the blocks, and I ignore Susie because she's doing what she's supposed to. And therefore I've reinforced that she did what she was supposed to, but there was no attention to her positive behavior. So one of the things that we look a lot at in Tuesday's Child from behavioral aspect is antecedents. We want to know what's happening before the behavior. Stopping the bad behavior is something that we have to do, but if we can put a lot of emphasis front loading what's going to happen before the behavior, oftentimes it de-escalates the behavior. And so right now, you know, if a kid comes into your classroom and he can be aggressive, and another child enters his space and he hits that child, we have to have a consequence for that behavior. Hitting's, you know, there's zero tolerance. There's no hitting. That's a reasonable expectation. But if what our data shows, if we can say that when we put Johnny on his own space with a tray and his toys are on his tray, he's more likely, and in a rocking chair, he's more likely to be successful in that situation, and he's more likely to keep his hands in his space, then we're never going to have to get to the consequence for hitting because he was set up for success. We arranged the environment so that he was able to sustain social interaction, which is one of our goals, to play appropriately, and to utilize classroom materials to the best of his ability. But we have to take data on that. We have to become good observers. We have to look at the environment. And we have to really look at our kids and say, what is happening consistently before this behavior happens? And so with antecedent planning, there's a lot that comes into play. There can be immediate antecedents, and so that can be something that happens directly right before. It could be a teacher's command is the immediate antecedent, and then therefore the child has a reaction to that command. It's cleanup time. The child immediately throws a fit every time you say it's cleanup. But there could also be removed antecedents, and that's the physical environment. That could be that right before it was cleanup time, this child had just gone to the bathroom, had come back and then started playing with a new activity, and then cleanup was called, and he was upset because he didn't have an opportunity to actually play with that activity. And so his meltdown or his response to his behavior was not really in response to the fact that it was cleanup, but as much as it was that he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. He wanted to be able to utilize the materials, and his time was up, and he was disappointed. And so as we're planning, and when we're looking at the kind of kids, and the goal plans and individualized plans for children, we really want to take those things into consideration. What is the antecedent? Is this child overwhelmed? If every day you want to put a goal plan in place for a kid who's struggling during lunch, well, let's look at what's happening before lunch. Is he getting the right amount of input? Is he, you know, what is happening so that we can help set him up for success? I think it's really, antecedent planning is really effective. And our classrooms, one of the things that we do, and as many early childhood educators, we spend a lot of time talking about transitional warnings. What's the purpose of a transitional warning? It's antecedent planning. It's to be able to prepare children to move on. Well, most of the kids that we see at Tuesday's Child don't really want to move on. They want to do what they want to do, and they want to, they don't care. They want to do what they want to do. And they don't see the importance of going on to the next thing because they're engaged in what they're doing. And so we want to help prepare them for that. So we say, in 5 minutes, it's time to clean up. In 2 minutes, it's time to clean up. And then I might even touch him. Now it's time to clean up. Your job is to go clean up the cars. And if you notice, what I'm doing is I'm consistently giving them a visual cue. And I'm not going to do this from across the room. I'm going to go over to this child if my data shows that this child is someone who can be very engaged and, doesn't take auditory commands very well. I'm going to go over, I'm going to get down on their level, I'm going to gently touch their shoulder, I'm going to give them the 5-minute command, 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to make sure that they have my eye contact. Often we assume that children know, especially by this time in the school year, that children should know the expectations of the classroom. They know the rules, they know the expectations. But a lot of the kids, they just, they do know the rules and expectations. But in the moment, they can't access that. Kids are egocentric. And they're like, I live in the moment. I want to do what I want to do, and I can't even think about what's going to come next because I live right here and right now. And whatever I'm doing right here and right now is the best thing in the universe. You could tell me in 5 minutes we're going to Disney World, and I can't make that transition from A to B. So we need to look a lot at antecedent planning. The basic rule When you're talking about behavioral intervention and setting a goal plan up, is when behavior is followed by a pleasant consequence, it increases. When behavior is followed by an unpleasant consequence, it decreases. So if you want to change behavior, and again, going back to praise, looking at our attention as the most powerful thing that we offer to children, the more times that you catch that child being good, the more information that you give about the right choices that that child's making, the more likely it is that the behavior that you would like to see will increase. And again, remember my block example, the teacher didn't do anything wrong. The teacher didn't, it wasn't that the teacher scolded Susie, so Susie wasn't punished. She just received no attention. So it's likely that Susie's like, well, what's really in it for me? She didn't get any feedback that she was making the right choice. The teacher just moved about her day. So one of the things that our teachers do at Tuesday's Child is they verbal follow the classroom. And what that is a running dialogue. And it's not praise, but it's attention. And so what we would say is, wow, Johnny's over there, he's cleaning up all the blue cars. Susie's over there cleaning up all the red cars. Miranda's cleaning up the blocks on the big rug. And we narrate what we see within the room. And what that's doing, and for the kid who's making the wrong choice, or not necessarily, he's just kind of standing there looking around like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, it cues him into what is the expectation of what's supposed to be happening right now, without ever saying to him, don't you know your job is to clean up right now? He's like, oh, it looks like I'm supposed to be cleaning. Okay. And once he engages in what he's supposed to be doing, a teacher will say, wow, look at you, you're cleaning up the blocks. And so the praise comes back in. But it didn't involve me in a power struggle. I didn't have to get on his level and be like, if you don't clean, then nothing positive will happen. So using antecedents effectively. Clear commands. I think so often with these type energy, powerful kids, we feel like we're walking on eggshells. We're always really hesitant to ever want to, so we say things a little gingerly. We're like, oh, you know, it's time to clean up. Are you ready to do that? And then I asked a question, and our powerful kids are like, no. And because I open myself up for it. And so I think we often get stuck in that. We feel like if we say it one nicer way, or a little bit more gingerly, or a little bit more nicely, that they might do it. And often with our powerful kids is they see that and they're like, well, no, because now you ask me a question and I'm willing to respond to you. We need to be very clear and concise in the commands that we're using. They should be matter of fact. It should be a pleasant tone. It doesn't need to be harsh, but it can be very specific. It's time to clean up the cars. Do you want to clean up the red cars or the blue cars? And I offered a choice. Sometimes I think our kids respond well to choices. They need those kind of limits. They often, you know, they're egocentric, and they're in preschool. These are preschoolers, and so they're striving for independence. That's fine. But we still need to be concise in what we're asking them. You need to hang up your coat. Occasionally, I feel like for a lot of these powerful kids, we need to add on the word now. So it's time to come to the table now. Because if I say to them it's time to come to the table, they'll say to me, I'll be there in a few minutes. 2 more minutes, 5 more minutes, next century, when I'm done with this. And so then adding the word now says to them, you need to do it now. And the expectation is now. I hear teachers often, or again, parents all the time, calm down, don't be upset, it's fine, you're fine, you're fine. And kids are like, well, you don't get me. What does calm down really look like? What does that really mean? Or when we say to kids, you need to behave. Well, in their eyes, they are behaving, because they don't understand. That's such a broad term. They don't, you know, and so what do we want? What does behaving look like to us as the educator? Does behaving look like, again, following directions the first time I asked? Does behaving look like staying with the group? Does it look like keeping your hands in your space? Does it look like playing appropriately with materials? Those are very different things. If we say to a child, just behave, you're not behaving, you need to behave, that's too global. It's too broad. they don't understand what that means. So we need to, as we're setting up and looking at how to put a goal plan in place and what behaviors we're really looking on, we need to ask ourselves, what is it that I want to see? What behavior can I identify that child, that we want to see the outcome of that behavior? And behaving is not one of them. So again, it could be keeping your hands to yourself, using safe words, following directions, sitting for circle time, staying with the group. Those are all behaviors that can be identified and observed and be able to have data taken from. We can be able to say that, you know, on Monday, Johnny was able to come into the classroom. I asked him to hang up his coat. He followed the direction. On Tuesday, he wasn't able to do that. But we were able to say those things, and we were able to consistently follow through with that because we know what behavior we're looking for. Clear commands allow us to have that opportunity. A lot of times, what we're doing is, you know, we can be unpredictable in our statements. Kids don't always understand. Sometimes we say it's time to clean up, or we say it nicely and we add okay on the end, and okay is really a question and allows us to be told no. And so we're not predictable, we're not concise. And again, the kind of kids that we're working on, and those challenging kids who have challenging behaviors, are master negotiators. They will find you on every loophole. And so we really need to try and be as consistent and predictable as we can be, because that's what's going to change their behavior. Our ability to present predictably shows them what the expectations are. It holds us accountable to what we say. And I think that's really important. Again, as I started with clear commands, we tiptoe around these kids. We walk on eggshells around these powerful kids because we never know what's going to get them to their spark boom. One day I asked him to do it and he was fine. The next day he's throwing chairs and having a complete and absolute meltdown. So how can we, how do we encourage them to, how do we become more predictable? We are more predictable in our commands. Come to the table, it's time for snack. Put your cars on the shelf. And so if you hear me, I'm not wishy-washy in what my expectations are. Contingencies. So I think as early childhood people and as educators and therapists, we use contingencies all the time to encourage kids to make the right choice. One of the, first then and if thens, but we really like to change that up. So we're always coming from the positive at Tuesday's Child. Again, how can we set them up for success? What's the most encouraging statement that they can hear that will encourage them to make the right choices? And so often we so often want to stop the madness that we say the worst thing possible. And so, for example, if you don't sit today for circle time, then you won't go to recess. Well, when in that statement did I say anything that was encouraging? Or again, what he should be doing? What can he do? So a better way to say is, remember, buddy, when you sit for circle time, then we go to recess. Nothing's threatened. Nothing's taken away. We're encouraging him to remember what he's working towards, instead of saying, if you don't do this, then you can't go to recess. And the reality is, as educators, we know that we're shooting ourselves in the foot by taking away recess. We want them to go to recess. We want them to blow off steam. Taking away recess is not teaching. There's so many important factors in recess, and we don't want them to miss out on that. So what we want to change it up is, again, it's saying, when you do this, then this will follow. And when-thens do not need to be a reinforcer. We want them to be naturally occurring in the environment. It can be as simple as just telling them what's coming next in their schedule. When for a child who doesn't want to come do their art project, or they don't want to work on their table work, one of the things that we do at Tuesday's Child is our day is structured, and that kids have to rotate from activity to activity. And many times they don't want to go to the stupid art project. They want to come and they want to stay at trains. They want to play with the Power Rangers. They want to do what they want to do. And so what we will say to them is, when you're done with the art project, then you get to go to trains. And just that little statement is encouraging. And it doesn't mean that they have to finish the whole art project. It doesn't mean that they have to make a masterpiece. It means that they need to come to the table, do one stamp or whatever the expectation is, and then they get to be done. And what they learn in that is, I can do this. It's not so bad. And then next time we might encourage them to stay longer. But we want them to be rewarded for making the right choice. We want them to be rewarded and know that they can move through this activity, and at the end they will be rewarded with their appropriate interactions. So I think, again, a lot of times what we get stuck in saying is, if you don't do this, then this won't happen, you know, and we're not helping them know what they need to do. So we need to think of what information they need to keep this fun thing. What information do they need to be successful here? Okay, so a contingency is stated when you give a direction. What we want to do in a perfect world is we want to state that in the beginning. We want to say, put all your toys on the shelf. When you finish cleaning up, then it will be time for lunch. Instead of saying, you need to go clean up, and then they disobey, they don't go clean up, and then we try and jump in and say, well, when you do this, and it'll be, you know, we don't want to add the contingency on afterwards. It is a reasonable expectation that our kids follow directions. We want to be in control of that. We want that information to come from us. And so what you want to say before you get a directive is, when you finish cleaning, then it's time for lunch. When you put your dishes away, then you can play with your blocks. When lunch is over, then it's time for recess. And I think you can very much pair the behavior that you expect to see. So if you're working on, again, circle time behavior, I would say, when you sit and listen to the story, then you will be able to be the first one to the door. So again, but I would do that. Not they don't come to the story and then they start moving all over the place and you say, when you sit, you get the story. It should be ahead of time. It should be antecedent. It should be so I say to the child, it's time for circle time. Remember, Johnny, when you sit for story and listen to the story appropriately, then you will be the first one to flip the lights, or the first one to the door, or the first one to give hand sanitizer, or the first one to whatever. The important piece is that I'm in control of it. I have set them up for success. I've given them the information that they need to be successful, and that they know what the expectations are. I give some, on the PowerPoint, I give some examples of when then, you know, you're welcome to look at them. Again, removed antecedents. So anything in the environment. So at Tuesday's Child, we spend a lot of time looking at arranging the environment, especially in a classroom environment where I feel like our kids can often spiral out of control. There's a lot going on. There's lots of kids in their space. There's noise. There's new toys. It can be overwhelming for our kids to regulate themselves. And so we want to put supports in place to help them be more regulated. And also to make the environment accountable for their behavior. It takes it off of us as the adult. So some examples that we have is we outline shoes, and we take that and we laminate them and we tape them to the floor. And we tape them to the floor at activities for the amount of kids that are allowed there. Anywhere where the children are going to line up, so in front of a bathroom, in front of the hallway, we do it in front of our gym. And what that does is it gives kids an actual visual boundary of where their body should be in space. And then it also says to us as the teachers, instead of having to say, you need to get in line, and that line is this arbitrary thing, we can say, it's your job to go to red feet. And the kids can run and they can put themselves there. It really has been life-changing for us. It takes, again, kids are they're motivated by it. They want to see their feet in the right space. And again, it's not this arbitrary, what's a line? Everything that we do is always coming from individual differences, so it's really important to look at those individual differences as a classroom. But we also feel like it's, these things help all children. Not many children can just go get in line, but many of the kids that we see in Tuesday's Child, it helps them be more successful to get in line. And so it's okay that all kids all kids have their own red feet or green feet or whatever. Other things that we arrange the environment. We might use a rocking chair for story time. It gives them some input. You know, they're with the group, they're on the rug, but they just need a little bit of movement. Our kids utilize fidgets. One of the things I hear often is that everyone will want to fidget, and I will often say, like, that's okay. But really, kids will only utilize something that they need when it's new. But after that, they're kind of like, I don't need this, I'm over it. But the kids who really need it, it will help them. Reinforcers. So reinforcers, when they're used effectively, are very powerful. Kids are very motivated by them, but we can be very stingy with our reinforcers. We're expecting A+ behavior to earn that sticker. We want to see the best, you know, the best little behavior we can for the whole day, and then you'll earn your sticker, or your treasure box, or your whatever it may be. And we would say, let's not look for A+ behavior. Let's look for C+ behavior. Let's look, and let's make it more specific, time specific. So let's say, again, our expectation is we want him to line up. He gets a sticker when he lines up every time. It's not contingent on an all-day behavior, because it's probably not a realistic expectation. For these power kids, there's so many times for them where they're struggling throughout the day that we need to reward them intermittently throughout the entire day. What we do at Tuesday's Child is our children earn food reinforcers. Food reinforcers can be very powerful. So when kids come to our program, because they have, again, as I said, they've had really bad, they have bad habits. And so one of the things that we like to do is we like to put food reinforcers in place for circle time, which tends to be a time where they're really struggling in their classroom. And we will say to them, when you sit appropriately with the use of a fidget or a rocking chair or whatever accommodations they may need, then you get to earn this candy. And it's an M&M. Or a Smartie or a Skittle or whatever. And kids are obviously very motivated by that. They get it, they enjoy it, it motivates them. Do we think that, and again, it doesn't mean forever. Eventually we will wean off of that food reinforcer, but what we want that reinforcer to do is establish a good habit. And what they need right then is to be rewarded immediately for that habit. Other times that we've used really powerful food reinforcers are for transitions. So if a child has a really hard time with transitions, we might say, in 5 minutes it's time to switch, and we will give them an M&M. In 2 minutes it's time to switch, and they will get an M&M. Now it's time to switch, and when they get to the activity that were expected, then they would get another M&M. It doesn't have to be food. Reinforcers can be whatever you want them to be. Whatever is powerful to you as the adult will become powerful to the kids. We are, you know, we are motivated by what other people, what the token is in our classroom, and kids want to be a part of that. So it can be lots of things. It can be stickers, it can be erasers, it can be markers, it can be, you know, it can be behavior charts that last longer. We say that a lot of times it needs to be more immediate, which is why we often go to food, because food can be more immediate. And that, you know, I highly recommend them. We've done other things in our summer camp where, for children who have more long-lasting, they're here more often for a longer period of time, where they earn a golden ticket for their appropriate behavior, and those golden tickets go into a hat, and they're picked randomly at the end of the week. So it is a more long-term goal plan. But for an immediate behavior that you're really trying to work on, I think it needs to be often, and it needs to be very reinforcing and high impact. When do you know a reinforcer is kind of ready to wean off? We would say for 2 weeks, you are high energy, constantly pairing that reinforcer with your attention and the behavior. Great job hanging up your coat, here's your reinforcer. Great job hanging up your coat, you know the rules, here's your reinforcer. At the end of 2 weeks, you can say, great job hanging up your coat. And then the kid says to you, where's my candy? And you say, oh, good for you. And you continue to do that. You stop pairing the candy with the behavior. At the end of those 2 weeks, the kid says, hey, I haven't had a candy in a while. Where's my candy for hanging up my coat? And you might say to them, you know what, buddy? You've got this. You know how to hang up your coat. There's something else we can earn reinforcers for. We can talk about that later. So there's always something else that a kid can work on. But and there's always an opportunity to phase out reinforcers. But initially, you can't be stingy. You have to really heavily lay on those reinforcers, because they have to trust you. It has to become predictable. So one of the things that, so again, all of those things, setting them up for success, taking the no out, catching them being good, those are all part of what we would say needs to go into the front loading of changing behavior. You need to really put a lot of energy, a lot of time and energy into these antecedents and into really looking at this kid and saying, what's making this kid tick? And what behavior do I really want to work on? And it can't, you know, we would say it's not a stop behavior. Because often I hear teachers say, I want him to stop hitting. I want him to stop running around. I want him to stop yelling. And it's like, well, what do you really want? What's the behavior that you want to see in place of that? So it sounds to me like you want him to keep his hands in his space. You want him to follow directions. You want him to use an indoor voice. And it's just a different way of thinking. But what we can do is we can use that information and we can set kids up for success when we change it up, when it's not a stop behavior. So Tuesday's Child looks at discipline as an opportunity to teach. And we understand the importance of when someone hits you, you have to obviously do something about that. If someone is dangerous and aggressive, we have to stop that behavior. That's not allowed. It's not appropriate. We understand that, and we also think it's very valuable. But we really want to teach kids how to behave. We want to teach kids what is the expectation. And when they hit, what can we do to help to walk them through that? And we're not coming from what's the worst thing I can do to punish this kid so that he gets it, because probably we've done that. Many of the kids, you know, he probably hasn't been to recess in 6 months, you know, and so we really want to be able to say we want him to be able to go to recess. We want him to have those experiences, and we need to teach him what he needs to do to get to recess. So discipline versus punishment, right? Discipline is an opportunity to teach. Follow through is key. And I think, again, it kind of comes back to walking on eggshells with these powerful kids. We often spend, you know, we're like, well, maybe if I say it one more time, or maybe if I say it differently, or if I give them one more chance, they'll buy in. Well, all we've done is we've made ourselves unpredictable and inconsistent. And so we've been able to say, well, I gave him one more chance, it didn't work, he hit again, now he has to go to the principal's office. But what happened in between? So if for aggressive and dangerous behavior, what we would say is stop. Hitting is never a choice. You need to use your words. Your job is to tell your friend, I want to turn with that. And that's it. So we interrupt the behavior. We don't use timeouts because they're just not very effective for these powerful kids. They just want to bolt. And you know, they're going to challenge you and say, I'm not sitting in the chair, or I'm not thinking about what I'm supposed to be thinking about. You want me to reflect? Well, I'm going to reflect on how I'm going to get my turn back. And so we really want to, again, it's stop. Hitting is never choice. You need to use your words. It looks like you're mad. Tell your friend, I'm mad that you took my toy. And that's it. And it doesn't feel, it's not the worst thing in the world. And it doesn't always feel very satisfying as the adult, because you kind of feel like, well, wait, did that do anything? But what we want to teach them is, how do I need to stay with the group? What information do I need to stay with the group? And in the information that they need to stay with the group is they need to use their words. And for many of our older kids, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, we expect that they already have the words. And they probably do when they're regulated and calm. But when they're dysregulated, and when they're, you know, and when they can't access the words, it's not a realistic expectation. So sometimes as the adults, we need to give them the words, even though they're 5, 6, 7, and they know they should know better. I know that often people have a lot of questions about discipline and kind of our follow-through and interruption. We have about 10 minutes left, so if you guys have questions, I'd love for you to kind of send them in now because of the delay. It takes me a while to be able to read them. I'll keep talking as they come in, and you can talk about any question that you may have, you know, and if we don't get to all the questions, I'm happy to answer them via a blog later on. You know, everyone has my email. You're welcome to email me. So differential attention, kind of going back to discipline. Differential attention is one of the most powerful techniques when used, again, effectively. So just as I said in the very beginning, praise, 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 praise. It's so important to catch them being good. Differential attention is planned ignoring. And we use differential attention for annoying, inappropriate, whining, crying, tantruming behaviors. So a child comes up to you and they say, I want to paint right now. And we say, oh, you want to paint? You know what, painting's a great idea for tomorrow, but right now we're going to do, do a puzzle. And he or she immediately starts crying. But I want to paint. You never let me paint. You're the worst teacher in the world. I want to paint right now. And we've given them the information they need. Tomorrow they'll be able to paint. I know, buddy, you want to paint. Tomorrow's the answer. They continue to cry and whine. I say, I don't listen to whining and crying. When you can talk to me appropriately, I will listen to you. And I turn my attention away. I physically turn my body. I might give a visual cue with my hands that says I'm not going to listen to that. Now they're kind of really crying. Oh, you're a terrible person. Oh, you're the worst teacher. I continue to ignore, and when they stop and they take a breath because they're gasping for air, you say, oh, it looks like you're ready for me to talk to you. What would you like to talk about? No, I'm still sad. Oh, and you turn it off again. When they calm down and they go from gasping to, you say, oh, it looks like you might need a hug. Are you ready to, would you like to find something else to do? This is your puzzle. It's waiting for you. Differential attention is used as a consequence for non-compliance. It's used as a consequence for again, annoying behaviors, whining, crying, tantruming. Okay. So again, discipline. If you're trying to decrease the problem behavior, after 5 days, you want to ask yourself this series of questions in terms of aggressive or dangerous behavior. So remember, the only time that we're using an interruption, or what was formerly known as a timeout, is for dangerous and aggressive behavior. Throwing, kicking, hitting, screaming, spitting, biting. And every single time that happens, you want to say, stop. Hitting is never a choice. You need to use your words. What do you want to say to your friend? You're mad. You're replacing the behavior. The redirect is the most important part. All you want to do is stop the immediate behavior, right? So stop. Hitting is never a choice. For our younger threes, we would put them to their bottom and we would say, we would physically put them on their bottom and say, hitting's never a choice. You need to use your words. Say turn. And then we would stand them back up. I know that in a lot of agencies and organizations and schools, that's probably not realistic, as you have a hands-off policy. So then I would use the sign, stop. Hitting is never a choice. You need to use your words. We do, if that doesn't work, so let's say the kids at the carpet, they're playing with the cars, we've given them, and they keep banging on the floor. And we say, buddy, your car needs to be quiet now. Your job is to roll the car. And they look at us and they do it again. You can remove the object and you can say, looks like you're done with that car right now. When, you can try again in 2 minutes. 2 minutes goes by, they get another opportunity to re-engage. Our goal, again, is always about how can we give them the information that they need to try again. If we say to them that you can't try again until next Thursday, and it's Tuesday, it's not a realistic expectation. We want them to know what to do appropriately. In our classrooms, for aggressive and dangerous behavior, if a kid's aggressive once, we would do an interruption. The second time they were aggressive, we would say, it looks like you can't be here right now. Your job is to go over and do pegs or a puzzle. And we would have them fill that peg or puzzle board. And the reason being is because it's regulating. It's they're looking at the same place. Their vision is in one area. Where with a pegboard, they're putting the same thing in over and over again, and it's regulating. At that point, we think that our kids are so they're like a volcano. They've exploded. They're gone. It looks like they can't be here right now. They need help pulling it back together. And so that's what we want. They can re-enter the group as soon as they finish the pegboard. I'm not silly enough to think that the kids are going to go willingly. I realize that kids are going to, to have a fit, and that you might have to matter-of-factly bring them to the area, to the pegboard. That's okay. They're disappointed and they're mad. Next time they can make a better choice. Is there any questions? So one of the things I want to leave you with is, thank you so much for your participation. And also, one of the things that I love to tell teachers, it's always one of the things that we ask tell parents to ask teachers to do when they first come to our program is to remember at the end of the day for these strong-willed kiddos is to remember to greet their parent or their caregiver or whoever, even to them, with the 3 good things that they did that day. And it doesn't have to be great A+ behavior. It can be, you know what, he worked really hard at getting in line today. He looks great in blue, and I love the way he came to circle. And the rest of the day might have been a disaster, but the 3 things that he or she leaves hearing that day are the 3 things that they did well, and that they do make good choices, because our kids make good choices every day. And you can talk about the bad things and the negative things, but you can do that independently. Oh, okay, sorry, Emily, I didn't see it. Okay, so the screaming. What do you do about the screaming? I think it depends on the situation. What I might do is say, I don't listen to screaming. You need to use your calm words. If they're doing it in a way that's trying to get their point across, and so let's say they were hitting and now they're screaming, I would say that that's an improvement because we want to decrease hitting. And so I would say, wow, it sounds like you're really mad. You need to say to me, I'm mad, that's mine. If they're screaming just to be like, ah, then I would say that's inappropriate. Your job is to use a calm voice. I also might try and give them something to do with their mouths. Can they chew gum? Can they chew on a Chewy? If they're, can they suck out of a straw? Something that gives them something else to do. Kind of the final thoughts is always, what can they do? What can they do? So we often again give them a lot of information that they can't do, but what can they do? What can he do instead of screaming? And when there's a lot of kids around, I would just say, that hurts your ears. You know how to use a calm voice inside. Good for you. You know the rules. Kids learn from their peers. They want their peers to like them, hopefully. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Again, if you have anything else that any other questions or concerns or information that you need from me, please feel free to email me. And thank you so much.